telling you, Teagues, I've said it before, I'll say it again, if you're buying one vehicle in this segment, you got to pick one. You can't have all of them, you got to pick one. This is the one to get. It's the best by miles, the best all-rounder.
You've got rocks in your head.
You're not the first person.
This is not the be-all and end-all. It's a little bit boring.
Yeah.
It doesn't really float my boat. Figuring out which small car to buy can be pretty difficult. Just look at all these options.
That's right, the small car segment is more competitive than it's ever been at a time when Australians are rushing out to buy SUVs and indeed larger cars in record numbers. So we've assembled all of the major players in the segment, but to make matters easier, we've selected 3 of the most obvious contenders.
And it seems the market doesn't always listen to the comparators because historically the Toyota Corolla has been the biggest seller, but it's not the best in the segment by a long shot. Then there's a new kid on the block, the Hyundai i30, which is the latest and greatest and the one most likely to bring the fight up to the segment leader, which brings us to the Volkswagen Golf, the leader in refinement and the best all-round driver's car, which has all the other manufacturers just nipping at its heels.
This is going to be fun, Teagues. So you take a seat inside the Volkswagen Golf and you think to yourself, what exactly do I get for my money? Now, don't get me wrong, there's nothing especially wrong with this interior, but it doesn't have that premium feeling of something like the i30. And this is a really interesting case study of a European vehicle that doesn't have all the bells and whistles up against a Japanese or a South Korean car that feels like it's got a whole heap of gear for the money. This doesn't get leather, it gets cloth trim, and it just doesn't feel like a particularly special cabin, even though that's what the Golf promises to deliver when you get out on the open road.
Hyundai wanted the i30 to take on its European competitors, and from the outside it's definitely got the style. When you get inside, that definitely carries through. From the choice of materials, the colours, the textures, the layout of the dash, that infotainment system's clear, easy to use, and that floating tablet style, loads of features as well. You're going to want for nothing in here.
The venerable Toyota Corolla. Take a seat in here behind the steering wheel and, well, it's just not as premium as the best in the segment. What it does have works, and I guess it's got what you need, but there's a few things that jar. It's got orange stitching, which doesn't quite match the blue exterior. It's got hard plastics, different colours, but it does promise to be bulletproof, reliable, and the infotainment system, while basic, works. And that's the most important thing. However, sitting around talking about the interiors is one thing. Perhaps the most vital part of these hatchbacks is how they drive. So we need to get moving to test that out. Teagues, let's go.
We know this is not the best car in the segment, yet it remains the highest selling small car.
Yeah. It's amazing, isn't it? And look, this is exciting, Teagues. It's got orange stitching and a blue exterior.
Don't even talk
Revel
about it.
in the excitement.
I can't look at it. We've got brown on the dash, orange on the seats in a blue car.
There's a kaleidoscope of colours. Look, I agree with you. The Toyota Corolla is hardly an exciting choice, and it's not an exciting car to drive at all. But I think that you can tap into the minds of the buyer with a few factors. One, they love the bulletproof reliability. So there's legendary stories of Corollas that have been running for 100 million kilometres, yeah, not breaking down exactly. 2, they love the extensive service network. And I think the third point is that the Toyota just gives you that slightly better than average sensation with everything that it does, and it doesn't really do anything wrong. And I think that's why people keep coming back to them.
Yeah, exactly what you said. It doesn't do anything wrong. It's not a bad car, and if you buy one, you're not going to wonder why or regret it.
Now, neither the Corolla nor the rest of the cars we're testing today come with autonomous features, so don't be shocked by what you're about to see. Welcome to the sea of excitement. Revel in the premium interior of the Toyota Corolla. Now, there's nothing especially wrong with it back here. It's reasonably comfortable. I've got plenty of shoulder room. Headroom's impacted a little bit by the angle of the roof here. That's not perfect. And the seats are comfortable, but there's really not a lot back here, is there?
There's nothing.
Yeah.
There's no air, or there is a 12 volt actually.
One 12 volt.
No air vents though, and the material in the seats just feels a little bit odd, and the shape of those windows I think makes you feel a little bit more closed in than in some of the others. So the all-new i30's recently arrived, and we did that range review, and I have to say, it was really impressive, and I think there's a lot to love about this. What do you think?
I love that range review that you guys did, and I thought that you really drilled down into what the main part of the appeal of this all-new i30 is. And I have to say, sitting here in the driver's seat, this is a really, really impressive vehicle. It's really well executed. I think what Hyundai's done with this vehicle is they've delivered what I would call a big dollar driving experience. And what I mean by that is that often with this kind of vehicle in this segment, it's all about cheap and cheerful. You know, I didn't spend much money and I got a bargain.
But this doesn't feel budget.
Absolutely not. This is not an expensive car, but it doesn't feel cheap either. It's great to drive. I think the local steering and handling tune is a big factor in why this is so good. It soaks up these country roads effortlessly. And for me as a driver, it feels like a really premium product. So Teagues, second row in the i30. I've got heaps of room back here. It's pretty comfortable. I like these seats. I like the material. It feels like I've got heaps of room back here, and I think that feeling of premium quality that we talked about in the front row, it's evident back here, isn't it?
I think like the headroom is quite impressive back here, and because of the colour scheme, it's so light, it feels really airy and spacious. No 12 volt though, or USB outlet. You do get a water bottle holder in the door and a decent sized pocket, and there are rear air vents.
So Teagues, the Volkswagen Golf has always been the hatch that every other manufacturer is trying to emulate. As a passenger here, for me, this is a really comfortable, insulated driving experience. It's pretty good. How do you feel there driving it? What are you noticing?
Oh, I totally understand why this is the benchmark. It is an absolutely beautiful thing to drive. You get in it, it just floats along the road. It soaks up all the bumps so well, especially the coarse chip, and when stones flick up, it's so well insulated when it comes to noise. The steering, it's not too heavy, it's not too light. But I just feel like you're in a bit of a bubble and you're not quite connected to the road the way you would be in something maybe like the i30 that's a little bit sportier feeling.
You prefer a more connected feel, and I mean that's fine. You prefer a sportier drive. You've owned a Subaru in the past, so you enjoy that connection between car and the road. But there are two things for me that really stand out with the Golf and have always been the case. One is that as a passenger, and even when you're driving, this feels like you're having a really expensive European SUV or sedan experience, not an affordable hatch by any means. That's number one. And number two, the reason the Golf formula has always been so successful is that even though I agree with you, it can be a little bit boring, it's that Volkswagen incrementally improve it for every new generation. So this 7.5 that we're driving, slightly better than the 7. 7 was a good car, this is slightly better. It's a formula that's been working for them for ages, and I don't think they're going to change it anytime soon.
Maybe a little bit difficult to get in the back here. The doors are quite narrow, but once you're inside, it's deceptively wide. It looks a lot narrower from the outside.
Plenty of room in here, nice and airy, tall windows, doesn't feel cramped at all. Some of the plastics aren't great, and it doesn't really feel as premium as some of the others. You do get air vents, but I think the reality is that this is, as we said, a base grade car, so it sort of feels pretty basic in here. Teagues, there's absolutely no doubt that the Toyota Corolla remains a perfectly solid all-rounder, slightly above average. There's also no doubt that this Hyundai i30 is the best Hyundai i30 there's ever been by some margin. However, you can't quite compare either of these to the premium nature of the Golf.
I have to agree that the Golf is a brilliant drive, and that did impress me more than I thought it would. The Corolla, understand how it sells in such high numbers, is adequate across all measures. But the i30 for me is just a little bit more vibrant, where the Golf I find slightly conservative and even boring.
Wow.
So the i30, great to drive. That styling inside a lot more premium. So for me, I would say the i30.
There's no doubt, and I think we can agree, that the i30 is a sensational small hatch. It really is. But there's also no doubt that the reigning all-round king, Volkswagen Golf, hasn't been dethroned quite yet, which means the other manufacturers still have a little bit of work ahead of them to catch the Volkswagen Golf.